It's Halloween! And for Halloween, I wanted to do something a little bit different. You see, most people on Halloween have a general spooky theme with their videos, like funny skeleton kind of spooky, but no one really goes for anything that's objectively terrifying. But I'm gonna break that mold with something which is gonna make every single viewer here cry, scream, and wish they were never born. OCs! OCs generally have a really bad reputation of them, mainly because of a lot of people who just don't know how to make stories. They just go to a popular media franchise, make something with slight alterations, and say, "Hey, look at my original creation! Glitchified Danamosh Sands!" Or, if you're lucky, and I mean air quotes lucky, you'll get someone saying, "Hey, look everyone, it's Anti-Soul Alan the Hedgehog!" But I feel like I might have struck a groove with something, because OCs can kind of be tied into the story-making process of having a roleplay. And I've been crafting these little narratives in my head, which no one has exactly been hearing, because I haven't found a way to express them. Sure, one or two times I have tried to put them into a video series, and even once I made it to Season 2, but a lot of them are so generally bad and unknown that I still consider them to just be completely hidden away. So, today is going to be something special, because this isn't just going to be an ordinary video of mine. This is probably going to be one of the longest videos I will ever make. It's going to be an audiobook of sorts, of me explaining the entire story of this funny little guy right here, Junichiro. So, how do I expect you to watch this? Well, I would just put this in the background or something, so maybe you have the video playing while you're playing some, I don't know, Minecraft or something. Or, if you're feeling extra dicey, you could turn this into an MP3 and put it on your car speaker so you'll have something to listen to on the drive to work. But once you finally decided how you want to listen to this, sit back, relax, and enjoy the complete tale of Junichiro. Junichiro, for the longest time, was quite the unremarkable person. He kind of blended into everyone else, didn't exactly have that much to say, but he was someone who took a lot of detail into everything he saw. So while other people would just pass by a building or something and then not put any thought into it, if there was something like someone moving out of the shop or a slight rebranding, Junichiro could look at that and go, hey, I remember that changing. And one day, that would come back to change his life forever. So, it was just another day. Junichiro was walking down the street with his favorite apparel, a white cap with an explosion on it. Nothing too remarkable, but just a little bit to say that he's a tad bit different. And he was walking along, and he noticed there was a building that was normally a charity shop. But instead, when he walked there, it was replaced with a towering skyscraper, with tons of guards looking around at it, and he looked up to see the symbol of it. There was some letters on it which he didn't understand, but the basis of it was that it was a black shield with white wording on it. He would then look around, asking some of the locals if anything changed, but they all responded with, "What are you talking about? Nothing's changed with the building, it's always been the same." So, clearly something was up, and against his own judgment, Junichiro decided to sneak into the building. Now, even though there were guards everywhere, they didn't necessarily look that much. They were mostly just bored, waiting for something to happen. And Junichiro would sneak around, getting higher and higher above the building, seeing more and more things that he doesn't understand. Getting to the second highest floor, seeing some wordings that caught his eye. The vault. And when he walked in, there were a lot of really, really weird things. 7 differently colored crystals that illuminated weird, a sword which looked like it could cut through anything, but there was something which caught his eye. A yellow staff with an unknown symbol on it, and a top hat with 3 of the same symbols all laced on its brim. Now, Junichiro thought to himself, he could go back home and live the rest of his life knowing that he missed out on so much, or he could make this a lot more fun. So, he punched into the glass, took both of them, and immediately an alarm was set off, causing for a bunch of people to rush down and aim what looked like weird guns at him. Not the ones he's used to. Normally the ones he's used to are basically just 2 blocks stick together that shoot out pucks. No. This one was made of multiple, really ridiculous small details, which he had never seen at that point. And the people themselves, they look weird and lanky and were in this weird pink bear suit. He couldn't really explain what it was, but before he could do anything, they started firing. And instinctively, Junichiro slammed onto the ground with the staff, hoping it would do something, and then money started pouring out. But not in a way that would be useless, but rather, it made a wall which reflected everything. And then, the staff started acting on its own, pulling himself away, making walls to avoid all of the bullets, and directly bringing himself to the top. My watch went off. And it all directly brought him to the top floor, where there was nothing in the room but this weird black core. And the staff would shift him towards it, and the second Junichiro touched it, it disappeared. It didn't feel like anything had changed, but the staff itself had stopped acting. But it launched him out of the window from the highest possible peak. Junichiro was frantically holding it, seeing if there was anything he could do, and then the second he reached the ground, he tried to slam it downwards to cushion his fall, and it did. After he collected himself about 15 seconds later, he looked backwards to see that the building had gone. It was replaced with the charity shop again, and everyone thought that nothing exactly remarkable had happened. But Junichiro still had the hat and the staff, so he looked down at the staff, and then looked back upwards, then down at the staff again, and then did a ruminating stare into the distance, and he thought, now this is where things get interesting. Throughout the next couple months, Junichiro would completely change his physical appearance, buying things like shutter shades to make him stand out, making it so that his legs were recolored to be completely white, and in the most interesting move he made to make him stand out more, he replaced his torso with solid gold. But this wasn't an easy operation, as the only general rule of his species is if even for a split second their head isn't attached to anything that's the right size to be a torso, they immediately black out and die. It was a very delicate process to be done, but in the end, he did it. His torso was now made of solid gold. He would then head back home, and for the next few months, it was mainly just a cycle of him making things more fun with the staff. And he would also find out more small things he could do with it. Like, as 2 random examples, he could use it as a lasso, and he could create platforms underneath him mid-air to essentially fly. But one day, when he was looking up something, he saw that there was a planet not too long away, about 1,000 or so miles away, which just randomly appeared a few months ago. And no one really knows what's there. No astronauts had bothered to have a look what's there. However, since his species didn't need any oxygen to breathe, the only general rule is if their head is off their torso, they're dead, he decided that he would be the one to look into what's there. So, he got a ragged bag, he attached it to his back, and then he started flying, away from his home to this mysterious planet, across the stars. A few days later, he would finally arrive, and he landed in a field. He slowed down, and then he had a look around, because what he saw shocked him. It was an absolute replica of his own home. This almost completely broke Junichiro's brain, but when things started circulating again, he walked to where that corner shop was, And even though it was still there, his hat and staff were just laid there, on the ground. And Junichiro looked at it and thought for a second, as he picked them up again and walked around for a bit. And then after about 5 miles, the world would be abruptly cut off and then switch to a completely different place, with cherry blossom trees and Japanese houses. And Junichiro very quickly realized what this planet was. It was an amalgamation of multiple different places and spaces in time crammed together into one single planet. And shockingly enough, it included everything that made people powerful. But then Junichiro had a thought. If there is someone out there who isn't able to conquer the world because they don't have the tools that an unknown hero has, then what if they came here and they found something that they could rule with just laying on the ground, uninterrupted? So they grab it, head home, and then their world, or even the entire universe, is in their control. And with the bag on his back, Junichiro found his purpose and goal in life. To go across to everywhere he could, with the first target being this planet, take everything that could be used for extreme power, like crystals or big swords or things like that, store them in that bag, and then dispose of them, to make sure that they can never fall into the wrong hands. Was this good? Was this bad? He didn't know, but it was something he could do. He started searching for more and more of these, and he would get relatively successful. And then, on one of these expeditions, something strange would happen. He started hearing something behind him, but every time he would look, there was nothing. This would happen a couple more times, and then he saw something which looked like... Well, it's sort of hard to describe, but imagine if there was a really tall man in a big black robe, and his head, which was shaped like an egg, had a black scar in it, and he had this devilish-looking stare. He didn't know what it was, but the one thing he did know is that it was trying to kill him. However, whenever Junichiro would strike, either by throwing a lasso at it, or by taking some money out of the staff and then flinging it as a projectile, nothing would happen. Junichiro started to panic a little bit more, and then it started to get larger. Laser beams would come out of it, and the world would get darker. But very quickly, Junichiro realized something. Maybe because he's getting scared, that is what's giving it more power. So he decided to walk towards it with a completely straight face, and then just look at it, avoiding everything it did. And over time, it would get smaller and smaller and smaller. Junichiro had it figured out, but he couldn't kill it. So instead, he walked up to it and said, "Okay, buddy, look, I figured out your shtick, and there's no way I'm going to kill you, because look at all the stuff I can do. I'm never going to fall for what you're going to do, so let's just call this as a truce, okay?" And begrudgingly, it shook Junichiro's hand, and they parted ways. This was a really short interaction, but it would prove to Junichiro that he wasn't alone on this planet. There were more things looking to behead him, kill him, or anything else across those lines. Now this is where things start to get complicated, because within the timelines where this would happen, there are only 3 instances that lead up to here. And the first one that splits is a rather unfortunate one, where Junichiro sees this weird-looking orb on the ground. He wonders, what could this be? He grabs it, holds it up to his head, and immediately a blast goes straight through his head, incinerating it and immediately killing him. It really goes to show how dangerous these kinds of places can be. And so after that, there were only 2 different universes where Junichiro reached this point. And in both of those, he kept searching. We'll focus on one of those universes for now, but when there's a split, I'll distinctly tell you. So, another month or so passes while he's searching for stuff, because he wants to do this generally silently, so that he doesn't get any enemies chasing for him for the things that he's stealing for the greater good. But then, he sees a leaflet, and then looks up to a broadcast on TV, which is talking about how 7 things called the fusion crystals have gone entirely missing, and that there's been a bounty placed on it, which the person who ruled this planet would directly give. When Junichiro saw this, he looked up and went, "Fantastic, now there's going to be other people looking for these kinds of MacGuffins. That makes my job so much more fun." And about 5 minutes later, Junichiro would walk around begrudgingly, and then he would bump into someone who directly passed him. They both had a look at each other, and they stared for a moment. And this is where the universes split. We won't say what happens in the other universe just yet, but trust me, this is important. So leave a pin in this in your brain. Junichiro would look at this small guy who looked like a robot and a brain operated on a wheel. They looked for a couple seconds, and then Junichiro said, "We probably don't have the same interests," and he would walk away looking for stuff. And because there was a bounty, there were more people looking around for this stuff than ever. But Junichiro already had a really large bag, so he figured, alright, I'll have to look for one more of these, and then I should probably depart. And in his searches, he found a temple. A temple which looked like it would have something in it. And considering that all these worlds are copied, what could be in there were either A, riches beyond his comprehension, which would actually be really hard to do considering, money summoning staff, or a weapon beyond his comprehension. So at that point, Junichiro ruminated and said, alright, if I want to loot almost everything on this planet, which I have done, then I might as well check in here, because there's no stones unturned for me. So he walked in and immediately misstepped onto a trap and got pelted at with arrows. Now the curious thing about this, which he would very quickly realize, is that those arrows went for the chest, and where normally they would have completely killed him, they just bounced off. It seems like this gold chest he got for aesthetic purposes may be a lot more handy than he initially thought. There are a couple other traps, but he was able to intercept them with the staff. For example, he stepped into one tunnel and there was a boulder rushing down. No problem, he could just make a couple barriers of money and then prevent it from rolling all the way down. So, after a couple more instances like this, there was a platter that was rising up, and he saw what looked like a book. Now, books are a pretty traditional thing to keep secret powers in. There are things like orbs, crystals, gems, swords, those kinds of things, and books aren't out of the question. So he walked forward, and then in that instance, he saw someone. Someone who looked relatively similar to him, and was definitely of the same species. He had a dark black suit with a red bow tie, a completely straight mustache, and a top hat with a coffin on it. He looked at Junichiro and said, Hey, what are you doing here? Are you trying to steal the thing that I was rightfully going to get myself?" And then Junichiro looked over and said, What? What do you want to use this for?" Where the weird man would look forward and say, "Well, you know what? I feel like if I were to tell you, there'd probably be some sort of mass hysteria caused. So why don't we not cause any fights and have me grab this book that has absolutely no importance whatsoever so I can be on my merry way, okay? Okay." While saying this, he would reach his arm out to try and grab it. But before he could, Junichiro spun his staff, flicked it forward, and then made a lasso, which enveloped the book and flicked it back to him. Junichiro would then give him a cocky glare and say, You know why I'm here? It's to stop things like these falling into the nefarious hands of people like you! And you aren't getting it back. The mysterious man would then start immediately chasing Junichiro, but it didn't seem like he had any natural powers, so naturally Junichiro just made a money wall and then ran away. But while running, he made sure to say, "If you want to try and fight me, then come on back. But there's a reason I'm guarding this stuff, and you don't want to know." And then while he was running off, he would hear on the other side of the wall, "You think that's a challenge? Oh, just you wait. In the future, I'll strike you, you won't even know it, and then you'll wish you never taunted me like this and just gave me the damn book." Junichiro just assumed this was an empty threat, and so ran out of the temple, and then collectively said, "Alright, my bag is really weighty, I've got pretty much everything I can carry, let's go home." It was a long journey, and it had been about a month since he headed back home, as finding the stuff wasn't necessarily easy. And then, when he got back home, after about another week's trip, he then sat down and thought to himself, "Alright, so I have all this stuff. What do I do with it now?" And he thought, if I was protecting all of this, I couldn't do this alone. So he started to reach out to a couple of people who thought they could assist, but everyone just kind of thought that Junichiro was, quite frankly, insane, because who else has the goal to find a load of things and then preserve them? Well, everyone except one, someone who didn't even sign up, but still found his way here regardless. During a day where Junichiro was still ruminating as to what he should do, he heard a knock at the door. He would go and respond to it, and he saw a person who looked relatively similar to him. He had an orange torso, and he had a blank golden cap. He would then go, "Oh wait, hold on, this isn't the wrong door, I was supposed to be talking to next door. Can I leave?" But then Junichiro would look over and say, "Wait, hold on, before you go, you might have seen someone talking in the newsletter about how they're looking for different things all over the world and then making sure no one nefarious can get them. Do you have any, specific skills or something?" Where Maverick would then look over and go, "Well, I am in somewhat of a hurry, but I am actually quite good at building stuff, if that would help you in any way." Junichiro would look over and say, "Well, I'm no mechanic, but they could definitely help me. Anyway, you should probably go to that, meeting or whatever." Maverick would go, "Well, you know what? You actually do kind of have my attention, but I'll get to you when I'm done over there. Bye-bye." He would then frantically shut the door, and it would wander in Junichiro's mind for a few hours what that person was capable of. And then after those few hours, someone opened the door. It wasn't exactly a knock, but more so someone just casually opening it and walking in. Junichiro would be concerned for a second, until he saw that same person who was at the door before. And instead of saying anything, he walked forward and held something. It looked like the end of a wind-up toy, but whenever you pressed a button, it would spin on its own, so it never needed someone else to charge it. This person would then look up and say, "I've got nothing else better to do, so you think you could use my help?" Junichiro would look up to the man with a smile on his face and say, "You know what? A mechanic like you is just who I've been looking for. Oh, by the way, what's your name?" He would look over and say, "Well, I don't have a name. I was never really given one, and people never really asked for it, oddly enough." Junichiro would look over and go, "That's sort of odd, considering how, yeah, this species doesn't specifically ask for names that much, but I would at least expect there to be one. So, how about I give you one?" He would look over and go, "You know what? That just sounds dandy. What are you thinking?" Junichiro would think for a second and go, "Maverick. That rolls off the tongue. Do you like that name?" He would then look over and go, "You know what? I actually quite like that name as well. Let's go with Maverick." Junichiro would then get some rest after this, And when he woke up, he would go downstairs, and he saw what looked like a full exoskeleton for a robotic body. It had a golden fedora, a full black suit, and it had electricity radiating out of its arms. Maverick would then look up and say, "Turns out I actually got that done quicker than I thought, huh?" Junichiro would then walk forward and go, "Okay, what is this? This is like an entire person built out of like..." Wait, hold on. He taps it, and then he realized it was made entirely out of wire. He doesn't even know how Maverick got it to look so convincingly like plastic, but that sort of took Junichiro aback. He would then look over at Maverick and say, "You know what? You may just be the real deal. How many more of these can you make?" Maverick would then look over and say, "Well, I only really have the materials on me to make about 3 more of these different bodies, and I haven't even figured out what goes into them to make a brain or whatever." Junichiro would look up and then say, "You know what? If I got someone to replace my torso with solid gold in surgery, then..." He then shook his staff and got some money in his hands. "We could probably find someone who knows how to make a brain." Now, this is the point where something kind of odd happens, because I haven't entirely written the part from here to a long way into the future. But that's sort of intentional, because if I ever want to make more material out of this, then I can just make it take place in this general time frame. So I don't have to go, okay, did it happen here or anything around there? No, I can just have it happen in this position. So from here, time skips forward a couple years. And there are a few things that are changed by this. First of all, there's now 3 artificial followers of them, which is what resulted out of those bodies made out of wires. Basically, they conduct electricity, and they can generate it from their back, as from their back they have a wind-up key, which is just naturally winding up all the time, because that's what Maverick was able to invent. Maverick, for about a year or so, had also been working on this portal. He didn't entirely know where it would go, but he needed a power source. And that is what they were searching for when we warp back to here. Essentially, there's this material that comes out of a gem and only exists on their planet. The material itself is called Trident, and there's only 2 that exist, and one of them is actively being in use. And the reason why one of them is actively being in use is because about half of the people on the planet shouldn't exactly necessarily be alive because of a birth defect. Think about how when humans are born, there are 2 different sexes there can be. But instead of one of them being a man and then one of them being a female, one of them is always actively okay, and another one needs life support in the air to always be alive. Think about it as like a 50% chance to be lactose intolerant, but all of the air outside of where that's illuminating is full of lactose. I know that's a terrible analogy, but there's no other way that I can put it. And one of them is being used as a beacon in the middle of the town. Now, neither Junichiro or Maverick would be killed without it, but so many people would that people don't even dare to touch it. However, there was rumors that another one could be located in a nearby cave, but there weren't exactly much details on it, as people who are harmed by it would get an overdose the second they entered and immediately die. However, because both of those 2 weren't affected, and naturally people made of wires would bypass this, all 5 of them decided to venture into the caves. There was about 5 minutes of walking without any results, and then there was a split path. Junichiro decided that 2 of the wired machines would go a secondary path, while both he, Maverick, and one of them, just in case, would go down a different path. Another 3 minutes of walking would take place, and then they'd hear something. It sounded like the sound of machinery reeling in something, but they couldn't draw anything from it, so they continued walking, and about a minute later, they found it encased in something. But no one could break it. It seemed like this weird, invisible force that just wouldn't move away. So they figured, alright, we might need something to break into this. But what? And then something comes out of the stone around them. It was a note. And all it said was, Maverick, when you die, you won't be the only one. It was an extremely ominous message, and all three of them decided to run out. And they tried to shout for the other two to run out, but they didn't hear anything. And they just assumed that they would probably be out in the meantime as well and head back home. So, imagine his shock, where when they went back home, hours and hours later, nothing came. They were either completely lost or something had happened to them. But because of how many questions were raised by the cave, they also just wanted to keep it in the back of their minds as something they could sort out. After all, they could always find more materials to make more bodies for them. As Maverick was running out of the tunnel, he also found something perfectly nestled in one of the rocks. Not deeply ingrained with them, but in a perfectly put shape inside of them. This being a weird white sword with a ruby in the center of it. Maverick took it without that much thought, as he had been studying swordplay for quite a while, and generally knew what he was doing with it. When he got home, he would then test it on a couple of sandbags, and it immediately cut through them, showing that this sword, even though he didn't know much about it, was no joke. He then asked one of the bots to go outside and find something heavier to break. So he did, and then he sat down and waited. A minute passed. He probably assumed that he was going quite far to get it. 15 minutes passed. Then he started to get a little worried and thought, if he doesn't come back soon, something odd is happening. An hour passed. 1 full hour without any word from him. Keep in mind that they all have radios to talk to each other, but it had been silent for at least 50 minutes with no talk from any of the robots. And that left just Junichiro and Maverick. Junichiro wanted answers as to what the hell was even going on, because it's not regular for 3 robots, which are programmed to specifically follow them and help them, and have the ability to conduct electricity through things, would just casually disappear like that. So, he went into a room which was made for writing. It was the same room where he made the leaflets explaining his plan. And so he stretched out his arm to... That's the watch beep again! And so he stretched out his arm to start writing. But just before he could, he felt something through the wall. Something that was tugging at his arm. And it would then pull him a little bit further. He then looked over and noticed some weird-looking slot which looks like it was made for paper. Junichiro tried to pull his arm out of it, but he couldn't exactly do it. He was going to shout to Maverick for help, but then he heard something. Some sort of rustling in the cupboards behind him. And so he tilted his head back and saw that there was someone in there. And so he looks, and then he sees a familiar symbol on a top hat. And just like that, Junichiro's heart stops as he realizes who's in that cupboard. Remember me, Junichiro? The door would then slam open to reveal the same person who gave those threatening words to Junichiro years ago. The man he still didn't know the name of. Junichiro would somewhat sassily look back and go, "Oh, what, was this your plan all along? To lock my arm inside of a suction thingy so you can come in and do some blows?" He would then look over to the other end of the table where he put his staff. "Yeah, sorry buddy, but I'm 1 step ahead of you." Huh? When he looked over, his staff was gone. In a frantic worry, he looked all around to try and find it, and then looked up to see that the man had already had a grip on it. And don't even think about using this to try and worm your way out. So, now that I've got your attention, I've been attentively watching a lot of your little adventures over the years. And I've been thinking, while watching on these sidelines, what would be the best way to strike at you? But you know what they say, he says, as he reaches into a pocket underneath his coat. It's better to show and not tell. He would then pull out a set of physical pictures that he took. Junichiro didn't know what these were, and he was still somewhat trying to get his hands out of this thing that was tugging at his arm. And Junichiro saw the pictures, and his heart lodged into his throat. He saw the picture of two of the robots getting drawn into a giant laminator, which would then encase them into a piece of paper, where the man would then stuff them into the underside of his coat. And he was there, in the rocks, where the other guy was looking, and now it was Junichiro's turn. And that's not all. Take a look at what's in the other pocket. He shows a couple more physical pictures, and they show images. Images of the paper being hung on walls as a display piece, specifically for him to look at. And after a couple more pictures of him posing in front of the pictures, he would then say, you know what, and there's one more which you might like. Showing a frame of full gold, showing something much, much larger than what would be a normal piece of paper. The moment Junichiro saw all of this, he would panic and try and yoink his arm out as hard as possible. But every single attempt was futile, and this would cause the man to step back and laugh. And you know what, Junichiro? He says, as he walks back to the cupboard. I have something very special prepared for you. He would then open a secret cabinet within the cupboard, which he specifically made while Junichiro was outside. And this would cause Junichiro's thoughts to go from, oh my god, I have to get out of this, to, no, no, no! As when the doors would go down, it would reveal an entire freezing machine. And rather than it freezing, it would encase whatever it's covered in gold, making Junichiro completely unable to use any of his senses. The man would then look at the machine, and then look back at Junichiro, frantically begging for mercy and trying to pull his arm out, and all he could say was, I think it's about time you join the others, don't you? All while this was happening, Maverick was still working on the portal, but he would be alerted by Junichiro's screams of terror. He then ran towards the door, which led to the writing room, but then found that it wasn't just locked, it was sealed shut. So he ran back to the room he was at before and grabbed the sword, trying to break very little pieces of the door, but because of how hard it was sealed, he could barely break through it. But before long, he would then hear the screams silenced. No words were coming out of that room for a solid 10 seconds, where he would then hear the man say from across the room, and now for anyone else that's left, I suppose I can leave my underlings to those. For now, we get home and celebrate. Maverick didn't know what happened to Junichiro, but he knew that he was the last one left, and he only had one chance to be able to bring this all back. Because while working on the portal, he was also working on a tracking device, which didn't just need a small sensor, but would also put on a display where they are in the world, showing the amount of footsteps they took, where they turned back, where they may be, and anything related to that, just so he could see where everyone is. He then ended up getting a glimpse of the man walking away with a massive gold block. He then breathed to himself and did a throw towards one of his pockets. And it landed. And because of the pressure he was feeling from moving the gold block, he didn't notice. Maverick stood behind the door and breathed a sigh of relief. But then he had a thought. If that tracking device is discovered, then either he or his underling would know what's going on and head directly back to this house, considering that they know that Maverick is the only one left. So frantically, Maverick would go back to work on the portal, as well as writing a letter for if anyone else were to show up. Because if he can get that portal to activate, which he only needs some of the trident in the caves to do, then he'll be able to actually get some help. Maverick was then working on the portal and piecing everything together in his head. This thing needs a power source to run. The one thing he can think about being powerful enough to run a portal like this is trident. But the only trident he could easily reach was keeping half of the population alive. And the other one was being held up by a border he didn't know how to get through. Hopefully, he could get the one through the invisible border. And throughout all of this, he was working on some of the smaller details about it, writing down a note in case anyone were to get here. And then, he noticed something on the display. Whoever was walking forward had stopped walking. He then very carefully looked at the display for 15 seconds, and the dot, which indicated where the tracking device was, started heading back. He had been called out, he knew that they found out that there was a tracking device, and he only had one option left. He rushed out of the house and headed straight for the center of the city, and then pulled out the trident. It was the only option he had if he wanted to make sure that he could still stay alive, and he had to sacrifice half of his population to do it. Then when he was running back to his home, he noticed people stepping out of their houses and slowly melting to death, seeing the trident that Maverick took and then cursing him to hell. Maverick headed back, and he was trying to find the slot where he had to put the power source in. And he was struggling to find it because there wasn't any obvious place to put the power source. And then he heard a knock at the door, as the tracking device had reached his front door. Maverick was silent. He knew that whatever was behind that door would kill him if he ever showed his face. So, very quietly, he picked up his sword, slowly paced towards the door, and then, through the door, did a lunging stab and a pull. And he pulled out someone's arm. His arm. He was shocked. He had no idea how it would pull out his own. And then the door slowly opened to reveal a figure coated in red with two pauldrons on his shoulders, both with spikes, a shadowed head with white outlinings as to where his face was, and a sign that he was wielding, which simply said, "Denied." Maverick would try to strike him again, but he would end up hitting that sign, and his other hand would come clean off. Where it was then that Maverick realized whatever hits that sign reflects back at whoever hit it. Maverick frantically ran back to the portal, shoved his head into the trident so it could push in, and then reached over to hit the button. And the second he face planted onto the button, he couldn't lift his head. He didn't know why, but he couldn't. And then he blacks out, with his brain not having another thought, as the mysterious creature had shoved the spike pauldron into his skull, making Maverick's body drop onto the floor and die. The mysterious figure figured that that was everything that was going to be thrown, that they had successfully achieved their mission, and now only needed to find the bag where Junichiro was holding everything, and the mysterious creature would walk off. So, is this where the story ends? Well, no. Because if you remember something I said earlier, there's one more timeline we've forgotten to talk about. So, let's bring it back a couple years to when Junichiro met that robotic figure on the bridge. God, I haven't seen anyone in a while, and now that people are widely looking for some random crystals, this is going to be a lot more messy. Just gotta wait for it. Junichiro then bumps into the same person as before. It then blurts out, "Hey, watch it!" Apologies. Junichiro would then walk past for about a second, and then look back. Wait a minute, are you looking for those crystals? You seem to be in a rush. Well, yes, obviously. Well, now you have my attention. Have you seen any leads so far? You see how much they're giving for finding one? Yeah, that doesn't exactly matter for me, though, Junichiro says as he takes out a staff. The small robotic thing on a wheel would then look confused. Huh? What's that? Junichiro shakes a bit, and some money comes out as he catches it. Because I'm set for all I need. The robot would then step forward and think. Hey kid, how about you and me team up? Well, I've got my own goal that involves looking for them, so we could benefit from each other. Those crystals probably seem powerful, you know? Junichiro then briefly takes note of him prioritizing the power. His thoughts on him are neutral, not knowing if his goals are malicious or not. But he lets it roll, because it might be dangerous if it's left alone. So yeah, I'll follow for now. Hooray! Anyway, the name's Folly. Junichiro's mine. I'm not from around here, but there's a reason I've come. I'll tell you why if you're curious, but it's a long story. Curiosity's a waste of time. Anyway, let's look for those nerdy crystals or whatever. Alright then, where do you suggest we look? Junichiro said to Folly. We'll just go anywhere, he said as he wheeled away. Alright, we'll keep going until we find something. Actually, quick question. Do you work for anyone? You seem like a kind of guy that would be in a sort of group. Wait, no, actually, let me rephrase that. Are you a leader of sorts? Yes. Maybe you have some subordinates that could help us find it. We are going to be more powerful with numbers, after all. Maybe you've already sent your guys to look around the place, so asking that would be redundant. But what are you talking about? My minions are stupid! Except for one. Huh, well, I guess that makes sense. Well, if you want, I know how to get around the place faster. It's gonna be a bit weird, though. Well, alright then, I'm used to weirdness. Okay then. Junichiro takes out his staff and flings it towards Folly, making a money lasso. So, do you just waste this money, or Junichiro reels it back, wraps it around Folly, and then puts it on his back? What the huh? He then glides into the air, using the money as platforms to surf in midair. He then brings himself higher, so he can get a better view. Oh, and don't worry about me probably not being able to keep the pressure behind my back. My torso is made of solid gold, so I'll be fine. Junichiro is flying for about 5 minutes until he sees a bright light on the ground. And that's the ticket! He lands onto the ground and unravels Folly. You good after that? Folly is completely disoriented after the flight and needs some time to readjust. Yeah, I think next time I'll only go for this when it's dire. Though on the bright side, there's a bright light over in the distance there. Oh, that must be one of those nerd crystals. Seems like it. I'll head there first to see what it is. Stay here until you're focused again. Junichiro would then walk off into the distance and look into the illuminated pit. That seems like what we're looking for. Junichiro then takes out a lasso and pulls up what he thinks is a crystal. It takes him a few tries, but he eventually gets it. But then Junichiro has a thought. He still doesn't know if this guy can fully be trusted. Should he tell him that I have it, or is he going to try and double-cross me? Junichiro then decides that for now, he's going to pretend that he didn't find it, and it was instead something else. But what should he pass it off as? He looks into his bag for a substitute, finding a dud crystal which didn't do anything. This'll do. Didn't seem too dangerous. Alright, let's do this. Junichiro then walks back. Oh, you're back. Okay, I'm back. I don't think this is the crystal we're looking for, but it does seem fairly important. Oh, yes, we found one! Folly seems completely overjoyed over the fact that they may have found one. Should we head back to your place to report that we might have something good? Yes. Alright then, you're the leader. Folly then proceeds to jump off of a cliff into a graveyard. Junichiro would look down at this, and then leap downwards, seemingly falling, but then stopping his fall with some money. Alright then. Well then, this is my base, where me and all my other gangreens live. I guess that works, and your group is named the Gangreens? Yeah, that could probably be interpreted as something, but I don't know. Set on a gravestone rock or whatever. Junichiro's a little less confident, but he doesn't make any complete decisions yet, sitting down on one of the graveyards with a little bit of hesitancy. Junichiro then looks up and sees a dinosaur and a possessed rock walking around. Junichiro points at them and says, "Wait, are these your guys?" "Why, yes, and there's more." "Go on." Well, there's Mal, Reginald, Godfrey, blah, 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 blah. Seems like you got quite the arsenal, huh?" "Yeah. And then there's Doug." Seems intimidating. Yes, he is. He's my secret weapon, or fish. Junichiro's eyes widen for a second, as if he's remembering something he doesn't want to remember. Right. Oh, I have a question, by the way. Earlier you told me that the crystals might be powerful. My guess is that you're in this for the cash reward? Yes. But I don't think you have the full context. So, tell me, why are you guys looking for this stuff? Because, if it's the cash reward you're looking for, the existence of me kind of undermines that because of, you know. Well, these gems might be powerful, you know. Maybe even more powerful when I might bring some of these guys to life. Junichiro's then thinking about what that could potentially mean. It seems to me like he wants them for the sake of the crystals themselves and not the money. Exactly what he's feared. But Junichiro doesn't point out the fact that he's not agreeing with them. At least not yet. Folly then asks Junichiro for a tour, and he brings him to a machine. "This is how we bring the dead back to life! And objects!" Junichiro would then have a random thought. He seems to be mentioning the dead a lot. Folly then proceeds to pour acid over a gravestone. "Watch this, and watch what happens!" Folly steps back, and then the grave started growing arms, eyes, and multiple extinct plants. Impressive. So your goal is to bring back the dead? Yes! And objects too! Interesting goal, I suppose. Junichiro's getting a strange vibe, but it's not far enough for him to jump the ship entirely. But the evil laugh isn't exactly helping. Then he would hear radioactive noises coming from one of his henchmen. That doesn't seem healthy. Oh yeah, because they're not. Well, I guess that is a bit more fitting. So, what do the emeralds have to do with the plan to bring people back from the dead? Maybe I can make one giant body. Wait, maybe? Junichiro then has another thought, that maybe this guy wasn't as good as he thought he was, and maybe now he should jump the ship. Well, I'm not exactly too sure as to what the ruby I gave you can do. Should we test it? Oh, yes! Alright then, I'll let you figure this one out. Here, have the, crystal. Boss. The crystal looks fabulous! Yeah, I figured it would be. He then hears distant screaming in the background. I won't replicate the sound now because screw off. Ignore the scream, that's just Doug. Yeah, figures if you're reviving a bunch of corpses. Doug wasn't dead when we revived him. So he sort of became mutated. I guess it makes sense. Junichiro would then take out the lime crystal and then hand it to Folly to see what he would do. This must be working from my genius brain! I want to find more! I need more! Junichiro then finally has the thought, okay, this is when he snapped. He's definitely evil, and I have the feeling I have to leave with the crystal somehow. But thankfully, he's got a plan. Huh, impressive. Hey, you mind if I take a close look at it? He says as he walks a bit closer to Folly. Yes, take a look. Alright then. Junichiro then grabs a hold of it and looks at it. He's looking at it, but he's just standing there. Not saying anything, not reacting, just standing there. It's gone on for about 2 minutes now, and it's getting somewhat concerning. But at the same time, Folly then hears the sound of scribbling above a hill. This is all starting to become weirder by the second, and it causes Folly to speak out for it. So, you're gonna put it back in now? Junichiro still wasn't moving, as the scribbling sounds get louder and heavier. Then one of his minions walks up and gets suspicious, and then pokes Junichiro. All of a sudden, both Junichiro and the crystal fall apart, but not into multiple pieces. Instead, it all seems to turn into a pile of perfectly stacked and colored money that all topples apart from the big pile. And that also happens to be the crystal. What the fuck? Then all of a sudden, a note appears from out of the sky. Folly grabs it, and the note reads, okay, so, I put some time into it, and I don't like where this is going. I'll gladly be taking that crystal back. Also, that wasn't actually the crystal I found, but rather a fake I used to hide what the glowing crystal might have been. My main goal here is to take every cloned item on this planet, bring it to my home planet, and dispose of it. And I don't trust anyone in the world to have them. If you have a problem with that, you can say that to my face. Kind regards, Junichiro. P.S. You might want to look up. Folly then looks up, and he sees a massive bundle of money wrapped into something that's obscured by a cliff. Suddenly, Junichiro walks over the edge and looks down with a button. Hey, Folly! Just wanted to give you a reminder as to what's going to stop you. He then presses the button. Adios! The big batch unravels, and all of a sudden, a bundle of razor-sharp money falls directly onto the graveyard, causing multiple cuts for most of the people there, as Junichiro then takes off to the sky. Folly then looks up and in complete anger goes, Doug! Find that guy and kill him! Doug would then crawl away. Junichiro then flies for a solid 15 minutes to get himself as far away from that base as possible. Well, that went better than I thought. Didn't know the money clone was that convincing. Hey, wait, is that another light? Junichiro then sees what he thinks is another crystal and heads towards it. The light is coming from a pipe. Junichiro does the same thing as he did before and uses a lasso to catch it. He reels it up, expecting to see a crystal. When Junichiro reels it up, it actually is! Seems like the journey's on his side after all. And then it gets back to the search. Junichiro then walks down a path. He can hear some sounds somewhere around, but he simply just assumes that that would maybe be something to do with the wind. Because, again, this isn't a place he's familiar with. Junichiro then sees a fence leading to a deserted town. What the? I remember this place. Didn't it get attacked by a sandstorm or something? He walks forward to see a completely decrepit town center. Whoa, this town does not look like it's in the best shape. Junichiro is distracted by everything and turns around while hearing a clicking noise behind him. maybe I should just turn back. He looks back and immediately sees two pairs of robotic claws with one of them sprouting towards him. He looks back for a split second and he slams the staff on the ground, causing a money wall to appear. Following him the entire time was Doug. And when he grabbed the wall, he felt something substantial. He brought the claw closer in to see if it was actually him. He sees a part of his arm, which is a good sign. He then thinks for a second, is this actually Junichiro? He then rips the wall in half as he doesn't buy it. With the time he was thinking about it, Junichiro was hiding behind a door thanks to a piece of his arm that was ripped off by the claw. He looks past the door, hoping he's not there, but alas, Doug didn't buy it. Damn it! I guess I have to face this thing head on, huh? Junichiro then pokes the staff around the door and tries to either cut through the hand or stun it, but Doug can only make sounds. Junichiro is heavily breathing, as the way Doug looks is setting off a memory that he didn't even know he had. He runs off behind the wall and starts to try and take off. Nope, I'm not doing this! Doug then starts screeching as he charges through the wall. But Junichiro isn't there. He went deeper into the village to try and hide into one of the houses, because he still wants to get a good look and have some thoughts as to what he can do. However, there was also a blood trail that went in the air and back onto the ground, hinting that Junichiro hasn't appeared just yet and is still somewhere in the town. And with Junichiro hiding in one of the random houses, he's trying to patch it up with some money so he can fly away without being detected. Around 10 or so minutes have passed, and Junichiro can only assume that Doug went to search for something else. Junichiro could breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that for now, he was safe. But he knew that he wouldn't be safe if he stayed anywhere near this desert town. So he took flight for about 3 hours, going over tons of things that he sworn he would loot later, until finally landing in a cold nighttime festival with no one there. Okay, surely, now that I've disabled their only way of getting here and gotten so far away that they can't detect me, surely now I can take a damn breather. But little did he know that the general truth which the Gangreens had, which was taken and spun into a dark message about Junichiro himself, was spread to the rest of the planet. So now, unbeknownst to him, he has a massive target painted on his back. And a massive group of people want to try and find him so they can claim his bounty. Meanwhile, wow, the more I look at this place, the more ominous and deserted it seems. Maybe I should go a little bit more on the run? He then looks into the sky and notices a green descending ship. Oh, and speak of the devil, that doesn't look very inviting. Well, I do still have one trick to use for scenarios such as this, Junichiro says, as then he stands still, trying to think about how he's going to approach this ominous sight. Somewhere around him, a voice then speaks.
Smart move. I would have expected one as greedy as you to try and steal that ship.
There's still no movement from Junichiro.
You have two options here. Either you come with me, or I kill you. It's as simple as that.
Junichiro hasn't even turned to face him. It's almost as if he's taunting the ranger. However, there is a faint sound of scribbling from a higher up wall. Either one could be distractions from the other.
Very well.
Junichiro would then find himself with a blaster rifle pointed directly to his head now. The person who was doing it didn't have a name, but they were in a full grey outfit.
If you give me that staff of yours, I'll let you go.
The blaster remained pointed. Still not a peep from Junichiro. However, the scribbling sound from above is getting faster, as if it's panicked in some form. This made the ranger grow suspicious. It had to be a bluff. He glances up at the sound of the scribbling, and then the moment he does, he all of a sudden sees what he thought was Junichiro crumble apart, but not into multiple pieces. Once again, it was a stash of money that was perfectly colored to match his body, all falling apart the moment he sees something on the roof. As then from the roof is the real Junichiro with a letter in his hand. Junichiro, rather panicked, throws down a note at the ranger, and then takes off to the sky using his staff. You know, for the record, I expected that to last a lot longer. Quickly catching the note and ignoring the money, the ranger takes off with a jetpack of his own, lowering a rangefinder. And his blaster was oddly at his side and not aimed at the target. Finally someone who can actually keep up with me in the air. Junichiro then dives to the ground, faces the ranger, and tells him something. You know, I'm not 100% sure who you are or why you're chasing me, but you might want to read that note. The ranger then follows Junichiro with his head hovering in the air and open the note. The note reads, "To cut to the chase, I'm not in this for the sake of robbing stuff. I'm here because this planet is a cloned amalgamation of other universes, and laying around them are weapons, crystals, swords, whatever you can think of that could give one endless power if wielded." The handwriting starts to get messier, as this was the point where he got to writing it faster. "I'm mainly into this because I trust the universe because of how vast it is, with the opportunity to come here and just casually take what's laying around and potentially rule with it. I don't trust anyone else in the world to be able to come here and potentially rule if these have no host, so my intention is to bring these back to my home planet and dispose of them so nobody can find them." And from there, the note gets cut off, as that's where the dummy collapsed. And may I ask, what's in this for you? Junichiro still doesn't know that he has a bounty on him. The ranger stays silent for a moment, then raises his arms up and presses a button on his gauntlet. The missiles on top of the jetpack he's using launches and home on Junichiro. If that's what you want to try and speak with. Junichiro then dashes back, flings his staff forward, and a ball of money chucks itself into the air and explodes the rockets in midair. "So, you're a cut to talking and get to the chase kind of guy?"
You can't run.
He shrugs, still hovering in the air. "Well, okay, if it's a chase you want, it's a chase you'll get!" Junichiro then slams down his staff, causing for a massive wall to appear, blinding his view of Junichiro, as Junichiro is still swinging behind the wall.
You'll only die tired.
He flies past the wall, aiming and firing a barrage of rockets from his gauntlet at what's behind it. As the ranger tries to fly above, there's a barrage of lassos attached to the wall, as when Junichiro pulls a lever, they all lunge forward, trying to catch the ranger at once. Junichiro expects an attack of some sorts and dodges out of the way, and the rocket's explosions only cause the lassos to move more wildly. The ranger then flies back, now readying his rifle and opens fire on Junichiro, where Junichiro runs back for about a second, then flips to handstand with the tip of his staff at the ground. Well then, if that's where you want to fight from, guess we'll have to clear out the airspace! The staff then starts spinning, and small bits of money start spurting around the ground. But the speed only starts getting faster, and it aims higher into the air, and all of a sudden, the spinning gets so fast that the flying money starts going into the air, and the ranger has to act fast. The ranger quickly starts shooting the money in midair, but is forced to land. And from there, he continues firing 3-shot bursts from his blaster at Junichiro. Junichiro uses the momentum from the speed to slide himself into the ground, as he also starts swinging his staff to try and intercept the projectiles in the air. The ranger gets hit by some of the money, but it just bounces off his armor, as the hunter starts firing from the ground. The speed gained from the slide also allows Junichiro to dive himself off the elevated platform and start flying once again, but this time he connects the string of money to the edge of the platform to make 2 of them. Well, if attacking directly won't work, time for me to use some other tricks. And then suddenly, what sounds like some kind of sonic boom echoes throughout the sky as the shape of someone with the stature of a golem flies by with the speed of a jet. Junichiro is thrown off by this, while trying to make distance away from the Ranger, but it doesn't deter him. Brilliant. I guess that bounty that was sent to him was also sent around to some others. Hopefully that's the end of it. The Ranger continues firing for a little while, but then takes off in the air to follow Junichiro. Lowering his rangefinder, he aims a gauntlet and fires a cable out of it, which wraps around one of Junichiro's legs. As it fires and grabs, he turns around to the Ranger. Funny, I had the same idea. He pulls a string attached to the two he was using to fly, and they all unravel at once, wrapping the Ranger's leg and making him half immobile to mirror Junichiro. Now they're both laying on the ground, thinking about how to outsmart each other. And all of a sudden, he hears a voice from in the air. Target sighted, commencing initial attacks. Roger that. They can see the figure clearly now, circling back to around the two as his hands seem to get switched out with blades made out of a superpowered unknown material. He stops his flight to lower down both of them. So, I hear you got a hell of a bounty. Something about fusion emeralds. Junichiro then points at the figure floating above him. I knew it wasn't just him! The Ranger then quickly opens up a pouch and takes out a small knife, cutting his legs free, readying a rifle. But he gets up and looks up. Junichiro, now pointing into the sky, stands still for about a second, and then he attempts to repeat the same trick he did with the money clone earlier. And this he uses to get out of the rope by falling out of an obscure tree which nobody could see. The figure then looks around and says, something tells me this will be one hell of a hassle. The Ranger steps forward and says,
The bounty's mine, unless you'd like to work something out. If you help me, I can give you a cut of the pay.
The figure then looks at the Ranger and says, sounds good. I'll scan for any nearby life forms. As long as we haven't gotten a good few miles away, we'll get him soon. Junichiro, after falling out of the tree, says, I had a feeling you'd try and be underhanded with your tactics. The Ranger looks forward and says, underhanded? I prefer efficient. Junichiro then looks up and says, to be fair, I am one to talk. If you're trying to be efficient, then why not just try and shoot me while I'm monologuing? It seems a lot easier to me. The figure would then look to Junichiro and say, true, but I don't really kill people that do nothing to me, so I have a proposal. You hand me those fusion emeralds to keep safe and to study with the Bastion, and I'll walk away and let you do whatever. Junichiro, curious by the wording of Bastion, looks up and says, tell me, who might this so-called Bastion be? That's classified information. The most I'll tell you, however, is that we like to make sure nothing falls into the wrong hands. Junichiro looks up and says, ironic. I've actually got a similar goal to you. I'm only here to loot all this stuff because this planet is an unnatural clone of multiple worlds and universes, and all of these powerful things are laying around without a host. Imagine then, if some kind of evil space tyrant came here and then saw something like, I don't know, a sword that can overwrite reality just sitting there without a host. That's what I'm here to prevent, is to find every clone item here without a host, return it to my home planet, and dispose of it. As I don't trust separate minds to follow that same goal. Well, me personally, I wouldn't dispose of it. Well, maybe disposing isn't the correct word, more so locking it away. Don't get me wrong, we'd still put powerful objects under heavy protection, but see, one of our main motivations is that knowledge is power, and frankly, there's a lot to learn from those relics you carry. You've caught my interest. Okay, I'll make you a deal, but on 3 conditions. Alright, what is it? 1, you show me this operation so I can get an idea of what I'm putting my findings into. I can work with that. 2, you don't want to double-cross me. If I don't agree with what's happening behind the scenes, or you try to do any sinister schemes with it, I'm out. Fine by me. And lastly, and most importantly, I keep the staff. It's the reason I was even able to get this far in the first place. And without it, I don't really have anything except for my solid gold torso, and that can only get you so far. Sure, so with that out of the way, I suppose we have a deal. Right, you have yourself a deal. Show me exactly where you reside. Oh, yeah. And as for you, Ranger? Things might have gotten a lot harder for you, huh? And while this interaction was going on, the Ranger didn't speak back, because he received a transmission from a while back, and then he turned his attention back to Junichiro.
You got lucky this time. If a better job hadn't come around, you'd be dead where you stood.
The Ranger then flies off, taking back to his ship, and departs. Junichiro then holds on to this person who gave him all of the details. Oh, by the way, what's your name? Oh, you can just call me Shep. That would make things simple. Oh, is Shep like short for shepherd? No, it's just Shep. Alright then, seems simple enough. There was then a bright flash of light which took out Junichiro's vision, and the second he regained it, he was at the entrance of a futuristic fortress. Junichiro couldn't believe what he was seeing and commented on it. Ooh, fancy. Not meant to be fancy, but okay. He would then walk past the gate. Follow me. We have quite a lot to see. As the two walk through the halls of the outpost, many experiments are shown from different rooms, such as chemical tests, tests on random powerful objects from across the planet, physics tests, robotic and coding experimentations, even portals to alternate timelines, albeit all of them seeming to be failing. As you can see, the Bastion is an intergalactic organization dedicated to finding out and preserving everything. The relics of the timelines, everything. You can find it here, though I will admit, not everything in here is 100% accurate. I alone hold all fully accurate knowledge in the database, which can only be edited at the HQ. Huh. I'm guessing these are all from things that you've recovered? Yes, and this is just from this planet alone. There are galaxies out there that are completely unexplored, and we plan to find them and research everything from under the cover of our advanced stealth technology. Huh, so I'm guessing this is a much bigger operation than I thought. As I said, we're dedicated to logging everything that can be seen, as to not let it go to waste. They say a man only truly dies when his name is uttered the last time. You couldn't say the same for everything else. Junichiro is getting a far better sense of trust from him than he ever did with Folly. Well, you've earned my trust. Let me think about how we can both benefit each other. And Junichiro thinks about how he got the bounty in the first place. Okay, so you said that there was a lot of money on me if I were to be caught. Where did you end up hearing this? My assistant picked up on the news. News? You know, the bounty. To what degree? It might have spread across the entirety of the planet. Who was the person who first called this bounty? Don't think I've checked, actually. I got too hyped up on the account of cash prizes apparently being replaced with your staff. I won't take it, though. Yeah, thank God. I can tell now that the truth between us is more well known. Yes, also, now that I think about it, I don't think that letter even had a name. Letter? Junichiro then starts piecing things together. So, wait, if they were only told via letter, how did Mr. Planet-hopping bounty hunter McGee get word so fast? Who? The Ranger? I don't know, he must have been on the planet at the time. I doubt it. I saw his ship as it was going down, and it seemed like he was unfamiliar with the terrain. That looked like an outsider. And if that means what I think it means, that means word spread of me being here has gone beyond this planet. To what degree? I don't know. But this is exactly what I wanted to try and dodge. It was all caused because of that damn zombie robot! What? Zombie robot? Don't you mean Folly or someone else? Yes, I'm referring to Folly. He bumped into me and wanted me to find the emeralds alongside me. And got one! Let me guess, he went on a power trip. But when I went to his base, it didn't feel right. He was malicious with the crystal. I was barely able to escape using that money clone technique you saw earlier. Typical for mindless, malicious buffoons like him. Though, if it's my guess, he must have tried to spread the word to others. That makes me wonder, how did you do that money clone thing? Oh, that's something I completely figured out with the staff. If I stand completely still and allow it to happen... The room is silent for about 5 seconds, as he then walks out of a door as the money clone collapses. I can fake my own position and go to anywhere within a quarter of a mile as long as I'm not seen or it's not touched. Interesting. It would seem that your staff has more capabilities than what initially meets the eye. Though, strangely enough, it only reacts to me, to the point where if someone touches it, they get an electric shock. And yes, that has saved me before. If it doesn't end up happening, then there must be something strange going on with it. It must be some sort of a chosen one artifacts. I see a strange lot of those. Where did you first find it? Well, it goes way back, to a few years ago. Junichiro then sits down, gets comfy, and explains his past history, how he found the staff, and the weird orb where he didn't know the origin of it. After hearing everything, Shep then steps back and says, Wait, so let me summarize this. One day, you go to this corner shop place, only to find out it's been replaced by a freakish, super tall, angled dark building, then found your hat and staff, was confronted by unknown creatures using bear suits, and then the building just vanished minutes after? Exactly. Surprisingly, that isn't the weirdest thing I've heard all year. Yeah, I'm not exactly surprised of how bonkers this planet is. True. By the way, I wanted to discuss something regarding our current alliance. Of course, go ahead. Would you consider joining the Bastion? What, with observing the universe and preserving the artifacts within? Oh, me? I'd love to. But there's a caveat to it. Think about it. After that letter was sent, there's a good chance that I'm on a lot of people's blacklist now. If I was alerted by a random ranger from space, then who knows how much further it goes. So, I'd love to join you on one condition. Well, here's an idea. What if you could just disappear? Actually, that was my original goal. Allow me to elaborate on that. Go ahead. Basically, when someone joins the Bastion, they're essentially removed from the outside world to ensure no distractions get in the way of our mission. The way I was thinking about it was I was intending to come here, get everything that's cloned, disappear, and then hide it on my home planet so it's not in consideration. And on the planet, it's a mystery. You can see how I buggered that up. Well, from my perspective, their identity is erased. People that knew them are forced into forgetting them. All their personal belongings are taken and given back to him to store away in their personal quarters at the HQ. But they're not completely forgotten. We don't just preserve artifacts, you see. Go on. Allow me. He then pulls a lever on his main computer table, assuming they've reached his private engineering room, as a giant screen slowly starts coming out of the wall opposite to the entrance. Behold the Bastion's database, the ultimate collection and catalog of identities and life forms universe-wide. Junichiro's eyes open. Holy crap! I know, right? But back to what I was saying. This is how we document every life form in the observable universe, from happy-go-lucky heroes to the darkest of villains and everything in between. We've even managed to document evidence of gods! I wasn't expecting it to go that deep! Trust me, I've been in this business for a long time. We're working on options for categories, but for now we simply have a list specialized for Bastion operators. My main point in telling you about this is that you've told me your plan all along was to simply preserve these powerful artifacts in the world and then, boom, vanish. The same goal as us. Therefore, I think you'd fit right at home. So what do you say? I'm gonna be honest, it takes a lot to win my trust. Because I've been double-crossed many times before. And even double-crossed others a couple times. And for me, I have to be shown a certain amount to be convinced that what I'm witnessing isn't just a facade. Okay. But you know what? After seeing all of this, Junichiro then takes off the bag that usually rests on his back, fastens the loop over the table, and pours almost everything on, revealing swords, orbs, gems, crystals, and 2 out of 7 of those emeralds. I'm in. Shep's eyes then widen in almost complete disbelief. Amazing, yes. I'd say you're in for sure. I'd be glad to have someone with your level of wits on the team. Junichiro seems delighted that he's with some like-minded people, but he adds something. There's just one caveat though. Because of that bounty that was sent to everyone, I can't continue as Junichiro. I have to completely change my identity. Which seems kind of tricky considering, you know, all of this. Look at me. I'm pretty distinct. Uh-huh. So, do you have anything that can make me, like, completely change my appearance? While all this is happening, there's some strange clicking sounds from around a corner, but no one's paying it any attention as they're too deep into the conversation. Oh, don't worry. Considering the amount of artifacts that we've been able to preserve, it seems like a shoo-in that we'll be able to completely change your identity. Do you want to, like, kind of stick around the same theme? Because I feel like that would probably work. Acid is dripping behind them from the corner, but still no one has noticed. Junichiro then looks up to Shep and says, just in case anyone connects the dots in the same way, I want to change my name. Let me think of something. Junichiro thinks of something that has the same ring, but is just different enough for people to be thrown off if they ever come here. How about Jungoro? It has a pretty good ring to it. I mean, alright, that works. It's settled then. Junichiro is no more. Look out, world, for Jungoro has a new purpose in life. Both of them are startled by a sound on the ship and then immediately look back. But nothing's there. Jungoro is immediately caught off guard and braces for some sort of impact. What the hell was that sound? Both of them look at each direction around them. No results looking forward, neither was downwards, neither when they were looking backwards. But then they have the idea to look upwards. And then they see Doug. Shit! How did he get into the base? Doug then thuds onto the ground, stretching out both of his claws. You! How did you get inside? That should have been impossible! This place is invisible to the naked eye! We have no choice! We must terminate the beast! On it! Jungoro uses a strategy that he's used multiple times beforehand, by swinging his staff to create a lasso. However, Doug is too large of a figure, and it doesn't go all the way. Damn it! It's not far enough! Doug then charges towards Jungoro, as he tries to dash backwards, but because the rope is still stuck on Doug, it's jamming the staff. The staff is jammed! I can't get out of the way! Shep then jumps in front of the rope, morphing his left hand into a futuristic Gatling gun, firing hard rounds of light into the rope and into Doug. Jungoro is forced into a position where he has to take the blow at full impact. The question, though, is if Doug can power through the hits. Doug can't get through the hits, and he's forced to go onto the roof and climb towards Shep. Jungoro briefly gets lifted into the air, but is able to cut the cord between them. Shep is still firing, readying his other arm with a fist just in case he has to punch it back, as Jungoro then lands onto the ground. Close call, but you aren't deterring me just yet. Now, I've got a plan. Hold off Doug for now! Jungoro then takes off into the distance to ready something, as Shep has to fight off Doug. Then while Junichiro is around a corner, Doug then dives into Shep then punches it straight in the mouth, and it starts to spit acid everywhere. Shep hovers into the air to avoid the acid spit, for the most part, as Doug then rips out one of his eyeballs and throws it at Shep, as Shep grabs it. What is this supposed to be? And then while he's confused, Doug lunges forward again at Shep. Oh, you motherfucker! He throws Doug's eyeball back at him, and then jumps into the air to try and avoid it. Doug then catches his eye and puts it back in. Hey, Jungoro! Whatever you're planning, now's a damn good time to use it! I'm trying, but it needs about another minute! Doug then flies back and then rapidly whips out a chameleon-like tongue, trying to stretch out and grab Shep. Shep switches his hands to ion cutters and frantically swings like a maniac to ensure that if Doug does catch him, it won't end well for him. Doug sees this and instead spits acid around him. Shep then runs over to Doug and suplexes him directly into the floor, apparently deciding to not give a damn about the acid. Hey, what the hell are you waiting for? Do the thing already! I'm waiting for a clear shot! Try to toss him to the hallway! Alright, get ready! Shep then grabs Doug, frantically swings around, and adds more momentum with every single turnaround. Alright, just stay away from it yourself! No worries! I never wanted to get close! Doug is then tossed into the hallway. He tries to lunge back, but just before he can, a giant claw made out of money grabs onto his tail. Remember when you tried to do this to me? Now it's your turn! Jungoro then pulls a lever, making him fling away. And then immediately after that happens, Jungoro tries to run back to Shep. It takes Shep a moment to realize what he made, but when Doug flings through the hallway and then goes back into the air again with the claw still attached, it becomes clear. Jungoro made a device with an extendable claw that has a base that can spin over itself hundreds of times, slamming whatever it's grabbed onto into the ground and ceiling multiple times over. Some kind of grappling hook. I like it. The rotation then slams Doug for another 2 minutes, with Doug appearing more and more battered each time it circles around. Eventually, the connection to the claw is severed, but Doug is still alive, albeit temporarily immobile. Damn, not even that worked? Jungoro then thinks about how he can now finish off the immobilized beast. Strong son of a bitch. Jungoro has an idea. He takes a look at his staff, and he knows what he has to do. He snaps it in half, chucking the first half of it into his mouth. Doug, before he can even realize it, is then forced through tons of electric shocks, slowly rattling and deforming the beast second by second, until eventually his eyes dim and his movements stop. Jungoro walks up to the wreckage to see if he can retrieve the staff, and he isn't able to connect it back on. God damn it! I knew I should have waited on your word! Huh? Then while he's angrily shaking the staff, the back half of it still shoots some money. Hold on a minute. Wait, what are you thinking? I have an idea. If you were to try and interact with it, it would still shock you. But you saw that this end can still fire out money. So what if, and hear me out, we make a contraption that can still get this to consistently fire? Like a blaster casing, where when I pull the trigger, it vibrates the staff. I doubt that it would be impossible considering all the resources here. That sounds like an idea. Alright, sure. We're gonna need to somehow put the staff into the artifact database somehow. Alright, let's see if we can pull this off. And that right there was when this Junichiro was no more. This is Jungoro. After finding out about the Bastion, the previously Lone Ranger Junichiro found a group of people that followed his own ambitions. And it turns out they'd done far more progress than he had been able to, not to discredit the amount he'd already found, of course. He decided after joining the Bastion to completely change his name and appearance, while still sticking to the style he was used to. The most notable appearance changes were that he now wears a jade cape that flown with the wind. His torso was also replaced from solid gold to a much more resistant emerald. And most importantly, After his previous golden staff had been snapped in half to save his skin in a battle, he was able to retool it into a blaster. With a push of a button, he's able to send aggressive vibrations to the severed half of the staff, allowing him to shoot out money at a rapid pace. It also has 2 levers on it, one allowing him to shoot them in clusters that break on impact, and another one of them twisting them into rolls with 2 ends rather than 4, which can be as sharp as a knife. He can still do the money clone trick he learned from the staff. However, there are some things he's not able to do after losing that side of his weapon. Mainly, gliding in the air is far trickier, and making walls for blind spots is almost impossible. However, this is also made up by him being able to create nets with one end of the string to another far quicker than he used to, making him better at laying traps. And finally, his personality also had a shift. He used to be an even mix of determination with a bit of cockiness. And now he has the personality of shoot first, ask questions later, not refraining from acting on impulse. With these changes, he was made into a far better fit for the Bastion, and he was a personal close friend of Shep as well, with him eventually being his second in command. If you see Junichiro staring at you funny, you might want to reconsider what got you there in the first place. And finally, after Junichiro was practicing with his weapons for a bit, we return to the portal. It was a few days after Junichiro had joined the Bastion now, and he was mostly spending some time getting used to the new blaster, because coming from a massive staff to a tiny blaster is a bit of an odd shift. He was mainly experimenting with a dial that was on the side of the blaster, where if he slid it in different positions, then the money would do different things. Say, for example, if he pulled it all the way back, then they would all be connected together, letting him grapple up and make ropes way easier. If he flicked it all the way, then they would all be detached and fire quicker, making them work more effectively as projectiles. But then Junichiro found that somehow, if you slide it in the middle of both of those, it then shoots out as a ball, and that can be used as a pretty heavy projectile. He does it, it lands in his hand, and he chucks it behind him. Huh, how many more things can this do, I wonder? He then hears a large thudding sound, as where he threw the ball just so happened to knock over something. And before Junichiro can look over, Shep comes over, wanting to talk to him. Oi, Junichiro, we recently got a member back, and I want you to meet him. In that moment, Junichiro looks back and notices a portal where the door went down, and his focus is split between both Shep and the portal. What the hell? Alright, show me. Gotcha. Hey dude, could you get up and introduce yourself? What? Hold on, let me save this. Junichiro would then get his first proper glimpse at Cypress. Cypress was an old friend of Shep who had been in the organization for a while, but he had only just about recently been recovered. Cypress was about as tall as Shep, but he always donned a pair of headphones, and his head was made out of a glass sphere. Cypress initially wouldn't see Junichiro, but that's mainly because Junichiro's species is naturally really short, and Cypress is 9'4". After a little bit of confused looking, Cypress would then look down and notice Junichiro. Hey, how did he end up here? From what I've seen so far, not many new faces show up. He came back recently after a fight with a giant mech, and to think I thought he died. Seems like a bit of a tough nut to crack. Wait, hold on. Just at that moment, Junichiro then sees something come out of the portal. He doesn't exactly know what it is, but it's overly ominous. Is that supposed to happen? However, Cypress hasn't yet noticed. The name's Scepter. I work as a musician mostly. Now, his head may be a glass ball, but that doesn't mean it's entirely stable, as there's a crack right through the middle of it. Throughout all of this, Shep noticed what Junichiro was saying and noticed the portal. What's supposed to no, is that even supposed to be here? I don't think it is, considering earlier you told me that none of your interdimensional portals were actually working, you know? After being reminded of this key detail by Junichiro, he then sends out a drone to try and look for it. And then, when the drone comes back, what it reports is startling. One dead body, sir. It looked a lot like him, the drone said, while pointing directly at Junichiro. Oh shit! The three of them immediately ran through a portal, and Junichiro immediately noticed something off as he sees the corpse of one of his kind with a gold cap and with 4 distinctly triangle marks going straight through his head. What? How is that possible? Somebody was here, and I'm not talking about the corpse. Junichiro would look down and then notice something. It's a letter. Junichiro then opens it and starts to read it off to everyone else. To whoever enters this portal, I am not safe. I don't know who you are, and I don't know who will step through the portal, but I and the rest of my group need help. Serious help. Jesus, seems like we came a bit too late then. Not too long ago, I was part of a group who would find whatever they could that threatens this world and keep them hidden away. This is already sending off some big alarm bells! Oh my god! Right. Over the past day or so, the group of 5 had slowly begun disappearing, likely due to someone who disappeared off our radar a year ago. He didn't exactly have a name, or at least one that he didn't tell us. But we know exactly what he looked like. He was in a black suit, had a sinister-looking mustache, had a red bow tie, and a black top hat. I wonder if that's the guy who killed this guy over here. Right. Just a few hours ago, there were only 2 of us left. Me and the leader Junichiro! I don't even... What?! Junichiro, absolutely taken aback by his original name being marked on the paper, continues reading. I wasn't able to go in and help him, but in a room not too far down from here, he just so happened to be hiding in this closet for weeks, waiting for a moment where he was alone. When that time finally came, that's where the letter ends! There's no more wording on this! Did he not even have enough time to finish writing this? Everyone else starts to get extremely concerned, and they're starting to think about if they should just back up and pretend like they didn't see anything. Do you guys, think we should go back home before anything gets hurt? Look, Shep, I think we're in a little bit too deep to just leave this as a blank. What if this world has powers that we don't even know, that we have to lock away? Yeah, to be fair, I did sort of forget about my mission at that part, so... What the hell, let's keep searching around this weird place. Almost immediately after stepping out of the room with the portal, Cypress would notice something. Hey, look up there. Is this some sort of display? And the display showcased the remnants of the tracking device's map, which showcased that someone was heading back to somewhere and then backtracked, assumedly being the person who killed the guy with the golden cap. Right, fuck, so that means they couldn't have gone that far if someone had to press a button to activate it. I think we probably have to look very carefully throughout these next rooms, so, Shep, you watch behind me as I enter this room. I can probably handle this. Junichiro then walks into a room, and he sees something that takes him aback. My staff? And it's not broken. Huh? He tries to pick it up, but then gets a taste of reality. I didn't think I'd... son of a bitch, this isn't the same one. Well, I suppose if that shocked you, then this must be some sort of alternate universe, most likely. I mean, that's what it said on the letter. Junichiro would then hear something very faint. Huh? What was that? Junichiro then runs to the nearest window and sees some movement. I don't know what, but there's something in that bush, and I am not looking at what's there alone. Me neither. What's your call? Do you think we should rush it? Fucking shoot it or something, I don't know. Oh yeah, I forgot I had a blaster. Stupid. Junichiro then aims his gun out of the window and fires it, expecting something to be hit. He fires about 5 or 6 shots, but then the money that hit the bush, with surgical precision, all reflected back at him at the same time, puncturing through his leg and near immobilizing him. That shit. Where the fuck did that come from? Shep was also completely taken aback by this, but he noticed an arm stretching over the windowsill. It pulled itself up, and then he got a visual on what it was. It was another person that looked just like Junichiro, this one with an extremely stern expression and handling a sign that he also carries as a weapon, with 4 spikes over each shoulder. Notable as the scientist who activated the portal had 4 spike marks directly through his skull. Junichiro, now near immobilized, tried to crawl away. No, Shep, do something! Shep then immediately places down a holographic shield, spanning the height and width of the room. But then the figure would simply walk forward, throw his sign like a boomerang, and when it hit the shield, it flipped and shielded him. He then walks forward, now shielded. What? Do you think I can't disable it as well? The shield is deactivated via Herd himself. The unknown figure then starts charging towards Shep as he's focused on bringing down the shield. Shep then tries to gut punch him to push him backwards, but the figure never swung. He instead held the sign to his chest, anticipating something like that, and that caused Shep to fly into a wall. It was at this moment that Cypress walked in and noticed everything that was happening. He then charged towards the figure with spike pauldrons and flat out uppercutted him. It stunned him in place, but it didn't lift it up. The figure then looked up at Cypress, an evil glare in its eyes, and swung the sign at him. Cypress then recoils back a bit, but then changes direction and roundhouse kicks the figure. In response to both of these, he slightly shifts back and moves his shoulders, so that they both end up running into the spikes. However, he didn't anticipate that Shep recovered off the wall and did a leg sweep. Junichiro had only just recovered his senses, so while the figure was getting back up, he switched the blaster into ball mode and fired it directly at his head, knocking the sign straight out of his hands. Yeah, that'll teach you, you reflecting little prick! But the figure still had one more trick up his sleeve. It was clear that he wasn't going to win a fight against Free, but in response to this, he threw the sign on the floor and then jumped into it, spikes first. This ends up impaling the figure and knocking him out. Junichiro was seemingly puzzled as to why he would seemingly commit suicide like that. Psh, what's that gonna do? All of a sudden, his chest is burst through by 4 invisible spikes, sending him into a state of shock and knocking him out. And it's unclear if he died from it. Son of a bitch! Oh, fuck! Get those spikes off the guy! And put the sign somewhere where he won't find it! I'm gonna try and heal Junichiro up! Got it! Shep then formulates a pretty on-the-nose replica of Medical Gaze, quickly banding up Junichiro's present wounds. But he's not getting up. Oh, shit! Okay. This is actually really bad. He then goes to check his pulse, but just then, there's a suspicious knock at the door, and it immediately catches Shep's attention. What he sees immediately alarms him. It's a figure that looks similar to the dark figure they just took out, but this time with a top hat, eye patch, mustache, suit, and a red-eyed glare. Cypress, you make sure Junichiro doesn't die. I'm gonna check out what the hell knocked at the door. Okay, he's not going to be going anywhere with me next to him. Shep bursts open the door. Who are you, and who do you work for? And the figure just responds with, Oh, me? Oh, let's just say I'm, collecting some debt. Shep then aims an arm cannon out and fires it at the figure, seemingly immobilizing his leg.
God. Shit, you're a lot more powerful than I thought.
Shep crouches through the doorframe as his tall figure becomes more menacing by the second as he approaches the top-hatted individual.
Well, maybe you should have started reconsidering being a debtor, or whatever the hell that was you meant about collecting debt. Now explain immediately what your business is here, and be straight up. No fancy monikers or rhetorics.
But then the moment Shep steps out of the door, his leg gets stuck. The small figure then looks up and smirks. Are you crossing the street? Shep looks down and sees one of the laminators hidden in the ground, completely immobilizing his leg. Gotta look both ways, my friend. The tone then immediately shifts as the figure starts walking towards Shep with full confidence.
I thought it was Mind the Gap. The name's... Actually, yeah, that would have been more clever. Regardless, you don't have to ask for my name. Just call me, Fandango. That works. And let's just say that you got in the way of one of my plans. I was expecting someone to head out of the portal, and I was alerted by the tracking device about a couple hours ago. And if you read that, you probably know what happens next.
He then cockily walks up to Shep and looks over the shoulder to see Junichiro's corpse with the 4 spike marks. He caught one. Not too shabby.
Yeah, living trophies or something about you having a suffocation fetish or some shit.
He's taking this weirdly in stride for having his life on the line. Fandango then looks up with a rather confused glare. What?
No, don't get it confused, it's just more efficient. Also, who the hell's that Spike guy? He nearly killed us.
Oh, that's just someone who I made from the ground up to kill
What?!
That's just someone I made from the ground up to kill everyone who got in my way. I couldn't come up with a clever name for him though, so I just called him Denial, and I think you can see why.
The sign?
Oh, the sign was just something I stole. That Junichiro guy, he is, or was, obsessed with keeping things away from the public. I was chasing him for years, but I hid myself away from him for the longest time, so he would eventually forget about me. And I spent all that time figuring out what would be best for keeping people still alive, but out of general combat, because I'm not the best at killing.
And I think you can probably tell what I settled on.
Shep then has a thought.
Oh, this guy. Pretentious fools like him are things that really make me ticked off. No individual power, having to rely on tricks and moves. Repulsive!
But when he eventually does respond, he takes it a lot more in stride.
No shit. Now, can you, get this stupid thing off my leg?
He looks at him with a shit-eating grin, and a string comes out from atop a building. I think you know what happens next. He slowly starts walking away, gripping the string in his hand, as it then reveals something. However, it doesn't look like a laminator. You probably thought I picked them because... What was it again? No. Right, because of a suffocation fetish of some sorts.
Bold of you to think that, considering our species don't even have lungs. But either way, I just tend to use whatever's most efficient. And for me, efficient is A, does it work? And B, does it prolong their suffering while keeping them alive to watch everything I do? I'm not gonna lie, you guys have some really weird anatomies, but beyond that, Jesus Christ, you're fucked up.
Fandango then looks up with another glare. Why do you think I really wanted his bag of stuff? He pulls it really hard, and all of a sudden, a bag flies up. This bag had the exact same appearance as the one that Junichiro used to have. Yeah, it's mine now, bitch! He's quick to realize this guy, Fandango, he's looking for power. He's a threat.
Alright, I'm done talking! You've taken this too far for far too long!
Shep then proceeds to rip off his leg, soon enough generating a leg made of hard light, and starts sprinting towards Fandango. He then pulls out a book, the same book he tried to take from Junichiro years ago. And it launches out a lightning bolt, which strikes Shep in the chest. Shep immediately starts charging for the bag and tanks the lightning bolt. But all of a sudden, he starts to slow down.
The fuck?
Mutton then begins to chuckle as he slowly walks away.
You think I don't know what's in this bag, considering how much research I've done into it? This is some bullshit you don't know you're messing with!
Oh, this pretty white here, I saw firsthand before he swooped in and took it. And I just so happen to know what he does.
And you know what it does? Anything it hits with that lightning bolt starts to move slower and slower and slower. And after a minute, it completely freezes.
But its mind doesn't. Shep is now completely frozen and can only muster words of fear.
This power, unknown capability, it doesn't belong to you. And it'll ruin you soon!
He simply tilts his head at Shep. Well, I'll give it a good home. Cheerio! Shep can still talk while completely frozen, though.
Hey, Spectre, you there? We're in a bit of a bad spot now.
Fandango is then looking in the bag rather casually. What will I use this for now? He clicks his fingers.
A statue just outside the yard! I was looking for something to spruce that up!
Cypress would then overhear everything after trying to tend to Jungoro.
Boy, you bitch!
Mutton then immediately looks up, notices Cypress chasing him, then holds on to Shep and presses a button.
Don't even try it, pipsqueak.
With a flash, both he and Shep completely disappear, leaving Scepter as the only one there. Cypress, filled with complete rage, goes back into the house to see if he can get any hints towards something, immediately remembering the map.
Maybe I can figure out where they are just from this. But I figure that I don't exactly have much time.
He then hears something in another room.
How am I alive? What happened?
Cypress is immediately waved with a massive streak of relief.
Shogoro! Thank God you're alive! Okay, so Herd was forcibly teleported away by some person in a red suit. I have no idea how to even get out of here.
Maybe the tracking device has something to do with it.
Well,
Just as fast as it came around, he then collapses again, completely passing out from the pain of the 4 invisible spikes blasting their way through his chest.
Damn it! Damn it! Damn it!
But what happened to Shep? Well, a few minutes would pass where he, in his completely frozen state, still within the confines of Fandango's garden, would notice Fandango coming out of the door with a golden block with Junichiro frozen in it.
You may be wondering why I brought myself back to you. What, 7 minutes later? Here to taunt me because you know how to use a magic wand? Please, enlighten me.
Oh, well, let me tell you something. I have been looking for this particular little gadget for years. There was a lot of stuff I didn't really care about in here. I didn't really need it, so I laminated all of that into this piece as well, he says, as he holds up another piece of paper that's an amalgamation of all sorts of crystals, gems, and weapons. I don't know what they do, and I don't care. Whoop.
he tosses them into a nearby wood chipper, which explodes, destroying all of it. And this specifically plucks at Shep's nerves, but he can't release it because he's frozen. But this right here is the real deal. He holds up what looks like an unassuming switch and flicks it. Just at that moment, there's a flash which blinds everyone's vision for a few seconds. Even Spectre, who's miles away, notices it and sees it as a flag for where to go. When their vision comes back, both Shep and Junichiro see a massive beacon.
What the hell is that?
See that beacon? It's what I've wanted to activate for years! Well. In 10 minutes, this beacon will line up with this nearby planet and explode. He points into the sky at a bright green planet that isn't too far away. Once that aligns, it channels all the resources off from that planet and shoots it into a gigantic invisible explosion that goes all around the planet. And you know what it does? It freezes everything, and I mean everything, in place. And unlike that perpetual state that you're in, even if I die, it's permanent.
Well, don't you realize that includes you? You fucking idiot!
And it applies to everyone except who flicked the switch.
Oh.
He says that while having another shit-eating smirk at Shep.
You hear me? I will replace this entire planet to match up with my image! And anyone who has lived here will have to watch in terror as everything they know vanishes, replaced with only a memorial of me!
Oh yeah, and Junichiro, he says as he grabs onto his gold bar, let's put you back in your rightful place at the throne room. It's funnier to leave you with the suspense! He then walks into his house, but before he does, he looks at Shep. You won't be smiling when I'm done with you, even if you wanted to. He then whips out a physical camera and takes a picture, getting a small image of it as a memory. Oh, I want to savor this moment later on in life, as that I can look back at a time when I didn't have everything. Wait, why is Shep's face blurry? Weird. Not to worry, though. I can still probably print it. A few minutes later, Fandango would come back, this time without Junichiro. He then takes out a lawn chair and sits down. Ah, Shep, during this wait, you've really stuck out to me, and you've garnered my undivided attention. And do you know what I want your last living memories of a living organism to be? Me. So I'm gonna sit here for the next 5 minutes, and the moment everything flashes, I'll pack everything up. Shep isn't even responding now. He's probably just not doing it just to give him the ever so slight dissatisfaction. Oh, not going to muster up any words? I finally broke you. I'm surprised it didn't take that long. Then suddenly, there's a swooshing sound coming through the air. Oh, normally I'd defend this place with my life, but yours doesn't have much time left. Come in! With 5 minutes left, Cypress then slams down in front of Fandango and looks at him with the most angry expression he's ever had in his life. His anger has taken over him so much that he can't even muster up any words, and instead leaps into the air and starts diving towards Fandango, intending to break his chest. And just before it happens, he pulls out the same denial sign from out of nowhere. Ha ha ha! You fool! You've landed right on a... He flips it, expecting it to be that very same denied sign that cripples Jungoro. But after he flips it, he then forgets about one crucial detail. If anyone except for denial, holds the sign, it then turns into a verified sign, where instead of reflecting it, it does double the effect. And when normally Fandango would have been just punted in the chest, this flat out split his torso from his legs! Fandango then lays there in excruciating pain as Shep is finally able to slowly start moving again with almost 4 minutes left until the world is completely frozen. But Fandango looks up and instead of being angry, says, "You know something? I'll take privilege in these last couple moments knowing that I've won. Because after all, who doesn't want to live forever?" Now that Shep is finally able to fully move again, he immediately flips off Fandango. What, he couldn't take his anger out on him when he was alive? But they don't have any time to think, as now they only have 4 minutes to get back home. But they didn't want to leave empty-handed. They wanted to save Junichiro. Okay, fuck, I'm Junichiro! Save! Now! There was absolutely no time for complex sentences as they burst through the doors. And they were eventually able to find Junichiro after about a minute of running. Cypress dismantles it from the wall, but then a speaker appears from the roof, playing a pre-recorded message. "If I am going down, you're all going down with me!" Hundreds of flashbangs and smoke grenades then fly into the room, avoiding the possibility of looking away. Because Shep wasn't the one that picked it up, he could shut the door and avoid it, but Cypress wasn't able to run out of the room in time, and the sheer amount of flashbangs completely shut off nearly all his senses, pretty much immobilizing him. So Shep had to run in, and then grab both Cypress and the gold bar, and make a bolt back home. And when they got there, they only had about a minute left until the entire world would be frozen. Shep then, naturally, walked up to the collapsed Junichiro and went, "Junichiro, wake up and open a portal! The world is about to end!" Junichiro then wakes up completely disoriented. What? Okay, where is the damn portal? Shep points to where the portal is and they immediately make a rush towards it. With 30 seconds left, Junichiro can't fit through the small door frame, so Shep has to spend some time punching out a hole at the top to try and make him reach through. But this gives them only 15 seconds to work with. On repeat until they're able to get him through. At this point, the beam from all the way over there is audible, as Shep then throws both Junichiro and Cypress through the portal. And when he's about to pull the gold bar through, with 10 seconds left, Denial then shows up from absolutely nowhere, being knocked out of his state of being dazed, and grabs onto the other end of the gold bar, pulling it away to make sure that Junichiro is taken as well. And there's only 10 seconds left until the world is completely frozen. Shep is giving it all of his might, and manages to pull Junichiro's side through the portal with only 5 seconds left. And then, 3, 2, 1... Denial then flies straight through the portal, but isn't able to go through all the way when the world freezes. And because he was only halfway through, the other half of him is decapitated. That half of him then falls out of the now completely frozen portal and looks up with the exact same facial expression as always. Dragging himself forward, trying to get one more strike on whoever he can, and then his head slumps onto the ground, dead. Everyone somehow made it back. Junichiro, still in an extreme amount of pain from the spikes, and only getting up after this to let off a simple before immediately passing out again. Cypress, scalded, half-blinded, and agonized, still hasn't regained his sense of sight and questions if he's even alive. Shep, not exactly wounded by anything, still needs a moment to regain his thoughts. I need a moment. Just give me a second.
And after all was said and done, Shep then focuses his gaze on the block of gold. About 5 minutes later, he brings it up to a machine which unseals everything, and for the first time in hours, Junichiro regains sight. What happened? Where am I?
Oh, you were awake quicker than I thought you would, but, to keep a long story short, my name's Shep, and we rescued you because your entire planet, thanks to some evil guy with a black top hat, he completely froze the world around him. And I don't mean cold froze. I mean frozen in time froze. What? So you're telling me that my entire species is essentially dead?
Well, not entirely. There is one more of you, but I don't think we should get into that because that's sort of classified information. Oh, of course, the one person that's still alive, it's classified. So, it's essentially extinct, is what you're telling me. Unfortunately, that is the case. Fuck. My whole purpose in life was to try and find as many things as I could so I could hoard them and keep this world safe. And yet, just with a few things I bring back home, I end up unintentionally killing everyone. I'm a fucking failure! Wait, hold on. Did you just say that your goal was to preserve stuff? Yeah, what about it? Rub more salt in the wound, why don't you? Yeah, that's, like, the entire reason we formed this organization. Wait. Have you been successful at it? So far, yes. We've gathered quite a lot of artifacts and supernatural trinkets from multiple different worlds. Wait. I could be done with all of this. Oh my god. There's someone else in this world who's actually doing what I wanted to do better than I was doing it. Fuck, there's gonna have to be a lot of stuff I have to reconsider after seeing this. Well, I don't entirely think you should spend that much time thinking about it because the Bastion is a secret organization, and because you know that we exist, we unfortunately have to wipe your memories. When Junichiro is told this, he's expected to react in a fairly shocked way, but instead, he simply glances at Shep. So you're telling me that you can essentially reset my brain to a certain point? Yeah, that's just about what we normally do. Okay, wait. Don't just reset it to before I knew about you. Reset it to a point before I even knew about the distant planet that had everything cloned. Are you looking for retirement or something? I wouldn't call it retirement, but I'm also just want to make sure I end up doing something else and don't figure out that you guys exist again after doing a piss-poor job at protecting things. That's a lot more thought-provoking than I thought. Just, follow me for a second. Shep then leads Junichiro to an operating table. Just take a seat and let the machine do the rest. Junichiro sits down and says one last quote. You know, I'm gonna miss the preservation job I used to have, but at least I know now the job's already been done. Rest well, Junichiro. It's well deserved. And with that, Junichiro closes his eyes. A few hours later, he wakes up in the calm countryside. Huh, I didn't think this stuff could have knocked me unconscious. Don't know how I ended up on this hill either. Marksville's just down the road, so I'd have to go out of my way to be here. Junichiro doesn't know for precisely how long he was knocked out since he grabbed the staff, but he wasn't entirely going to question it, considering that he might as well go back home and tell everyone what he just found, because if you found something as crazy as a staff that can summon money, maybe it could lead to some crazy adventures or something. But you'll never know unless you go out there and find out. What happened to Junichiro from there is relatively unknown, as even though he's still remembered in the minds of the people he stole from, he's so far away now that they would never be able to find him. Junichiro smiles, completely unaware of all of this, and starts afresh.